Project 2, we're going to use the extruding and sweeping tools that you learned in Project 1, along with some new tools, to build a digital model of this table. There's a wealth of digital furniture available online, and some inside Vectorworks itself, but the vast majority of it is modern, and in theater design we often need period furniture, which means we generally have to model it ourselves. When I build a model of a prop, I like to work from research whenever possible, so the first thing I did for this project was to look for pictures of an older style table. This photo came from a simple Google image search. You'll see later why it's best to have a photo that is close to a straight-on front view as possible. You should download this table image from WebCourses. Here's what the finished 3D model will look like. I think you'll agree that it's a pretty accurate representation of the real table. So let's get started. Open a new Vectorworks file. And make sure you have the snapping, attributes, object info, basic, and toolsets palettes open. Make sure to save your file before moving on. Set your layer scale to 1 inch. The smaller the object you're modeling, the larger you'll want your scale to be. Next, import the reference image into Vectorworks by either dragging it in, either of these is fine, JPEG or PNG, or using the import image file command. In addition to a reference image, you'll also need a general idea of the dimensions of the object you're modeling. Depending on your research source, you may have the actual dimensions available, or you may need to make an educated guess. I know that in general tables are between 28 and 30 inches tall, so we're going to use 29 inches as the height of this table. Since this photo isn't exactly a straight-on view, we'll need to correct for perspective when we measure the dimensions in the photo. I'm going to use the distance from the bottom of the front legs to the front of the top as the overall height. Using the tape measure tool, we'll discover that in the photo the height of the table is 4 feet 6, so we'll need to scale it down to make it the right size. Fortunately, Vectorworks has an easy way of doing this. Select the object you want to scale, and use the scale command. Select Symmetric by Distance. Click the button to specify the current distance. Click twice to specify the current distance. And then enter the new distance, 29 inches, and click OK. The drawing will be scaled down, and if you measure it again, it should be the new distance that you specified. Now that the reference photo is scaled, we can begin modeling the table based on the photo. Before beginning to model in 3D, however, I'm going to do a quick 2D drawing of the table. We'll be able to use the 2D shapes in creating the 3D model. Let's start by measuring the top. Measurements are about 3 feet 4 inches wide and about an inch thick, with an apron of approximately 2.5 inches. And it looks like the tabletop overhangs the apron by about an inch. So let's draw a rectangle that's 3 feet 4 wide and 1 inch tall. And another rectangle that's 2.5 inches tall and 2 inches shorter than the first rectangle to account for the 1 inch overlap on either side. Next, we'll measure the center column and discover that it's about 8 inches wide by approximately 1 feet 11 inches tall. I'm assuming that the column goes all the way to the underside of the top because I know that's how tables are built. So I'm going to draw a rectangle that's 8 inches wide by 1 feet 11 inches tall and align it there. Next, I'm going to establish the baseline of the table by drawing a line at the top of the table, and moving it down 29 inches. And I discover that I actually put the column in the wrong place. It should go there. And then I'm going to measure the overall size of the feet. So I'm coming all the way out to here, knowing that they're foreshortened a little bit because they're in perspective and they're turned at an angle. But so they look like they're about a foot wide and also about a foot tall. So I'm going to draw a 12-inch square and use it as the overall size of the feet. Then I'm going to use the polygon tool to establish the correct shape for the feet. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to start here. I'm going to hold down Shift to constrain this to be a horizontal line. And then I'm going to identify where the curves change. So it looks like here, potentially here, here. I know that because of perspective, this should be flat on the floor. Here, here, and here. Then I'm going to set the fill of that to none and use the reshape tool to add probably cubic spline is going to be my best choice here. Curves. I'm going to click in the center and reshape my polygon to conform to the shape of the feet. This looks like it's a hard transition there, so I'm going to move this a little bit so that it's not quite so hard, so it's a smoother transition. And this probably, just because I've seen these tables, probably looks more like that. Great. Then I'm going to take that, which is in perspective, so it's foreshortened, and move it down here, and then pull it out so that it's matches more of what I believe the overall size of the foot is. Then I can delete that, sizing a rectangle, make that solid, and use the mirror tool. Click on the center line that I want to mirror around, and there's my other foot. Next, I'm going to establish the true shape of the center column. So I'm going to duplicate my rectangle and set its fill to none, and then move it up and align it. I'm going to use this as a guide. That looks pretty good. So if you remember the sweep tool from the last project, we need half of the column to sweep it. So I'm going to go back to my polygon tool. I'm going to start in the center of the column. I'm going to hold down Shift and pull up, and then I'm going to start filling in curve anchors. So I'm going to click here because it looks like it curves to there, and then there's a curve there, and then there, and probably there. Then here, here. What's going on here? It looks like it's two curves out, two straight. And then I have, because this is in perspective, I have to do a little guesswork here. I think it probably looks something like this. I think it probably curves and then it looks like there's a bit of an inset, maybe. And then there's another curve, and we complete. So I can delete my sizing rectangle and then make this no fill and do some reshaping. I think I'm going to reshape this one using the radius, which creates actual arcs, parts of circles, rather than curves that are not actually circular. So then I can come in and do this. And I'm having to do a little bit of guesswork here because it's not a high definition photograph, so I'm doing a little bit of guesswork, a little bit of educated guessing, maybe just a bit of art to come up with this shape. If I was trying to be really accurate, I also could probably do a Google search. I know that there are places that sell table parts, and I could probably find a drawing, a more accurate drawing of one that was at least a better photograph that I could use as a reference, or I might even be able to find a CAD drawing online that I could download and use. But I think this is close enough for the model that I'm building. I'm not going to be building this table. I'm not going to send this drawing to the shop to be built. I'm only going to use it in the rendering for a set. So I'm trying to be close, but not necessarily 100% accurate with the model. So I'm going to set aside this shape for a moment. I'm going to make a duplicate of it. Place it here. Use the mirror tool. Delete my sizing rectangle, select both of these, modify add surface, and then set it to solid. And then I'm going to make sure that I send my tabletops to front. And I really could stop right here. I have all the shapes that I need to build a 3D model, but I've gotten this far, so I might as well go ahead and finish the 2D model, because who knows, I might need a model of a table at some time. So I'm just going to fill in the appropriate lines. So I think that's all of that. And then I'm going to take a look here and notice that this part of the table is probably an octagon. I see 3 sides here. I'm going to guess that there are 2 more sides that I can't see, and then 3 more sides in the back. So it's probably an octagon. So I'm going to draw a line here and a line here, and then just sort of put these 2 lines close to where they go, and then use this trick. I'm going to select all 4 lines and then use modify align distribute, and distribute left to right by spacing, which means that it will leave, of the objects you have selected, the left one in place, the right one in place, and then it will distribute the others evenly between left and right. So if we click OK, you'll see those move just a touch. So now these are distributed evenly. I can delete this one and this one, and then I can use the trim tool to cut away the lines from where they don't belong. And I could keep trimming, but at this point it's easier just to select them and delete them. So there I have what is a reasonably accurate 2D representation of the table, which now I'll be able to take parts from to use to sweep and extrude to create the 3D table. And actually I'm discovering that I missed a little bit. There's a route. It looks like there's just a simple cove route in the tabletop. So I'm going to add that in using the circle tool. So I think I'm going to use circle by radius. Looks like ½ inch isn't quite enough, so probably 3/4. So there's that. And then I can use the mirror tool to mirror that across the top. I can select those two circles and the top piece and modify clip surface. And then hit delete to get rid of the two circles and then draw that line. Okay, now it looks like I have a pretty accurate 2D representation of the table, which I can then use to build the 3D model. So that's the end of part 1, the 2D drawing of the table. In part 2, we will take the 2D shapes and use them to create the 3D model.